Ruchir Sharma in Breakout Nations. You go around the world looking for the next economic miracle. So let's do some globe hopping and start in China. Is this a temporary slowdown or the start of something more ominous?
Well, I think that it's the very important point that we are in China today, which is that China today is at the same stage with some of the gold medalists of growth, the economies that went on to be really successful, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, they all began to slow down. So I think that the slowdown in China is for real. It's a step function down compared to the 10% economic growth of the past decade, or really 3 decades. I think we are moving to a lower growth trajectory of possibly 6 to 7%. Now that still seems good in absolute terms, but the adjustment process is going to feel a bit painful in the coming few years.
And how much pain will Brazil feel from China's slowdown? Because those two are tied now.
That's right. I think all the commodity-oriented economies are the ones which are going to really take this on the chin, because I think that those currencies are very overvalued, especially in Brazil, and also the fact that commodity stocks, I think, after enjoying the super cycle for a decade, are now set to return to their old pattern, which is 2 decades down, 1 decade up. We've just had that good decade up, and with China now slowing down in some significant way, I think a lot of the commodity economies, such as Brazil and Russia, are vulnerable to slowing down even more.
Now, expectations are high in India, and in the book you say they have the population and the drive, but they still have some inherent problems. What are they?
Well, I think as far as India is concerned, it should be pretty easy because their per capita income is only $1,500. From such a low base, there's not much you have to do to grow that quickly. The problem there, I think, has to do with policy. That policy there hasn't been that constructive for growth, and therefore growth is slipping in India systematically, and government spending has been a bit out of control. So I think that India's problems really have to do with the fact that they got too confident about the fact that they would be able to emerge as the next China. And now the issue is that the policy has not been as constructive to support that big growth in India.
Well, 2 countries that you're very positive on are Turkey and Indonesia. You say they're Muslim and modernizing.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's your forecast for these 2 nations?
There are 15 economies in the world today with a size of around $1 trillion. And I think that the next 2 to join that club will be Turkey and Indonesia. And that's a very powerful signal because there's a lot of cynicism here in the West about what exactly Muslim economies can do. But the fact that Turkey and Indonesia will emerge in this club by growing at a fairly rapid pace sends a very powerful signal to the Arab world and even to the Western world that Muslim democracies can work. So that's the positive message for those 2 economies.
And before we write off Europe entirely, you say there are still a few nations there which can outperform. One of those is Poland, the other one is the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Why do you like these 2?
Well, I think that these economies are in the sweet spot, that they don't suffer from the same problems that Greece or other economies came to suffer from. The sweet spot is that they don't have the common currency, which handicaps them or leads to big debt cycles as what happened in those other economies. And yet they enjoy the benefits of being in the European Union. And the good thing about the European Union is it helps you build good institutions which promote a lot of foreign capital flow, FDI flow, and these countries are quite competitive in terms of the labor costs are relatively restrained, and the fact that currencies are quite competitive, particularly in Poland. And Poland also has a decent size. So I think that that is what stands them in pretty good stead.
Finally, let's bring it on home to the United States. What's the U.S. role in the next economic miracle? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think that the U.S. could do a bit better than what people expect, which is that in the U.S. there's been a lot of pessimism over the past few years about the fact that China's about to rule the world. The survey like in America was taken as to which is the largest economy in the world last year, and more than 50% thought China was the world's largest economy. So I think the fact that China cools down some of these big emerging markets don't appear to be as much as a threat, and the fact that the US today is very competitive. The dollar today is at the cheapest it's been in its floating rate history, and that you get some manufacturing jobs that are coming back to the US, all slow, but it's happening, and it remains at the cutting edge of technological innovation with all the big sort of innovations coming out of here, from social networking to cloud computing to all the killer applications. I think that's what keeps the US in reasonably good stead, and I think we'll be able to grow at about 2.5% or so, which is a lot better than the dreaded Japanese parallel that we were talking about a couple of years ago.
This market is
stock pickers market.
Stocks have rallied this year.
We're coming into a Monday where we're